Hello everyone, welcome back to Owen's Treats. For today's video, since spring is finally coming upon us and we're almost out of winter, I thought I'd make a St. Patrick's Day and Easter favorite dessert, and I'll be making grasshopper pie. Um, and no, it doesn't include grasshoppers, it actually comes from a cocktail. We won't be adding any liquor or spirits to this pie. It's a wonderful dessert, and I can't wait to make it. So with that, let's get into our first step, which is going to be our ingredients, and then we'll get into making the pie. So for our ingredients, I already have our pre-made crust in our pan. I just bought this, so it saves us some time. But if you were going to make your own crust, you would need 1.5 cups of crushed thin chocolate wafer cookies, and then 1/4 cup of butter melted. And then you just bake that, and then you'd have your prepared crust. But I already have a pre-made crust with me here. Then I have 1/2 cup of milk, 32 large marshmallows from a 10-ounce bag, and then 1/4 cup of uh, green or white um, menthins, and this is going to be our replacement for our alcohol. So we're just going to use the Andes chocolates, and then we'll have 1.5 cups of whipping cream, and then a few drops of green food coloring just to make it look festive and also like grasshopper pie. So with our ingredients here, we're going to move on to our first step, which is actually going to take us to the stovetop because we got to melt together our marshmallows, our milk, and our Andes thins to make the base of our filling. So for our first step, we're going to head over to the stove and get prepared. For our first step, we have a large saucepan here, and we're going to heat up our milk, our Andes chocolates, and our marshmallows until they're all melted together. But first, we're just going to do the milk and the marshmallows. So on medium-low heat, we're going to turn on our stove, place our saucepan on top, and we're going to add in our 1/2 cup of milk, and then our 1 10-ounce bag of marshmallows. And continuously stirring, we're going to continue to stir this until it becomes nice and melted, and it kind of becomes a nice and homogeneous mixture. And then once that starts melting together, we're going to add our chocolates into this. So now we're just going to mix until everything becomes nice and melted. So now that our marshmallows have become nice and melted, we're going to turn our heat all the way to low and add in around 1/4 cup of our Andes mint chocolates. We're going to keep stirring this until everything is fully melted, which is including the rest of the marshmallows and our chocolate now. And you want to keep stirring for this so your chocolate doesn't burn. And neither does your marshmallows. So now that our marshmallow, chocolate, and milk mixture is done, we're going to take this off the heat and let it get to room temperature before we're going to pop it into our fridge for just around 20 minutes until it starts to thicken up in the pan, and then it will be done. That will be our base, and then while this is cooling in the fridge for around 20-ish minutes, we're going to start on our whipped cream, which is going to be our second step. So for our next step, we're going to be making our whipping cream, I should say our whipped cream, from whipping cream. So I have our 1.5 cups of heavy whipping cream, and we're going to do 1.5 cups. And then with our stand mixer, or hand mixer if you have it with your whisking attachment, we're going to whip this up until it forms stiff peaks. And I have a small bowl here, and I just chilled this in the fridge for just a few minutes while I was preparing the other steps. It's not mandatory, but it's going to speed up the process faster if the bowl is chilled, because it does take a little bit longer to make whipped cream from scratch. So now we're gonna whip this until it forms stiff peaks, which does take a little bit, but be patient and it should turn out good. So now we're going to whip this until stiff peaks. So now that our heavy whipping cream has reached stiff peaks, as you can see, it's not kind of falling off the whisk at all, and it's really maintained its shape. We're going to set this aside, and then we're going to bring in our base that we made earlier, and we're going to combine the two. So now we have both of our bases for our filling. I have our marshmallow mixture here, and it's really thickened up, and it should really be like a really thick syrup almost. And then if you see it separated in the fridge just a little bit, you can give it a quick stir, and it should really just come together pretty nicely. And then of course I have our heavy whipping cream here, which has reached stiff peaks, and is looking very nice. So now we're going to take our base, and we're going to put it into our heavy whipping cream. Or should I say our whipping cream now. And I'm just going to pour it in. And I've made sure this is completely cool, so it's not warm or hot at all. I'm going to try to get as much out of the pan as I can. And then now we're going to just mix the two together until fully combined. And then we're just folding it together, and we're trying not to mix it so much so we don't lose the fluffiness that we get from us whipping the heavy cream. And then making sure to really get the bottom. And now that has lightened up quite a bit because it was really dark because of the chocolate, we're now going to add in our green food coloring, and we're going to add in 3 to 5 drops. I always say that, but I had to add more. And then we're just going to keep mixing this in. And there we go. We have our nice, almost sage green colored filling, and it should be still nice and fluffy. So now that we have that done, we're going to move on to putting our filling into our crust. So that's going to be our next step before we're going to put it into our fridge. So let's move on to our next step. Okay, so I have our filling here and our prepared pie crust. And like I said earlier, if you want to make your pie crust yourself, it's like 1.5 cups of crushed thin chocolate wafers, and then a few tablespoons of butter, and then you just bake it at 350 for I think maybe like 10-ish minutes, and then you'll get the same crust that I have basically here. I just opted for the prepared one that you can buy because it's easier and saves time. So now that we have our crust here as well as our filling, we're going to add our filling to our crust. And we're just going to scoop it on in. And then we're just going to smooth it out so we can fill our pan evenly. And it should be just a little bit domed on top. Now I'm going to let this sit in my fridge for around 4 hours until the pie completely sets. And then once it's done setting, we'll garnish it, and then I'll show you guys the finished product. So I'm going to pop this in the fridge, and then we'll come back for our finished product. And here is our finished grasshopper pie out of the fridge. It's been chilling for a little bit. All I did to garnish it was crush up some Andes chocolates, and I sprinkled that on top. And then I have a little Andes chocolate in the middle. And then here it is, our finished grasshopper pie. Thank you guys so much for joining me on another episode of Owen's Treats. I hope you guys make this for any parties coming up, for example, St. Patrick's Day or Easter, since it's now the start of spring, or well, in my mind it is. And so, thank you guys for joining me.